How They Break Inventors. 6 Ways to Silence a Genius. Chapter 1. From Antennas to the Grave. The Path of a Free Energy Inventor. Imagine a man in a dark shed at the edge of town. No generator, no fuel, just strange antennas and a box of parts. And suddenly the lamps flare to life out of nowhere. He is not a guru or a salesman, but an obsessed engineer who, at some point, becomes too dangerous for the comfortable world of conventional energy. In the 1930s, one such inventor shows a device that powers lamps and motors with no visible batteries or generators, only a bizarre component he calls a valve that pulls energy from the surrounding space. Scientists demand every detail, full blueprints, and independent replications, while he fears they will simply strip the idea from his hands and throw him aside. And rumors of broken lab equipment, strange visits, and possible sabotage end with his work not in factories, but in the drawer labeled unverified oddities. Decades later, another engineer builds a generator from coils and capacitors that, he claims, catches Earth's magnetic field and can run lights and motors without fuel. Newspapers cover it, the military shows interest, and he prepares a detailed multi-page proposal for the Navy, hoping to finally push his idea into the real world. At the same time, staged failed replications make him look like a fraud. His proposal is rejected. Whispers spread about a generous payout in exchange for stopping his work for years. And eventually there's only a brief line in a report. Suicide, with no deep investigation. Side by side, these stories read like the same script. A strange but promising way to get energy, a brief surge of excitement, then rising skepticism, public humiliation, legal and financial pressure, and in the end, a grave, and not a single working device left to switch on in front of a camera. The free energy inventor doesn't end up in textbooks or factory halls, but in late-night documentaries and conspiracy forums, with antennas pointed at an invisible force and a life story that officially ended, yet left far too many questions behind. Chapter 2. The Book That Wasn't Allowed to Teach You How to Fly. Imagine finishing a book that could change everything, and watching someone calmly slice out the pages that actually show how it works. That's what happened to Russian entomologist Viktor Grebennikov, a man who believed he had stumbled onto a real anti-gravity effect hidden in the microscopic architecture of insects and bee nests. His path started not in a physics lab, but on the ground in the Siberian steppe, where he felt headaches ringing in his ears and a metallic taste while lying over an underground city of bees. Obsessed with their geometry, he studied honeycombs and chitin shells under a microscope. And when he brought certain plates together, he reported that one would briefly hover before snapping into place, as if gravity had loosened its grip for a second. Step by step, he claimed to turn this into a flying platform lined with thousands of insect fragments, able to lift a person, climb hundreds of meters, and wrap the rider in a field that softened inertia and made them invisible from below. Knowing how insane this sounded, Grebennikov did the only thing that could move his story from rumor to reproducible experiment. He prepared a detailed book. It was supposed to include full-color photographs, step-by-step visuals, and schematic details, enough for serious readers to understand how the platform was put together. But just before publication, the book changed. Hundreds of images vanished. All technical drawings were removed, and the final version left the tale but amputated the instructions. The reader got a story about a flying platform, but not a single diagram precise enough to build or properly test it. On the surface, it looks like editing. In reality, it's one of the cleanest ways to neutralize a dangerous idea without banning it outright. You allow the myth, but erase the manual. Instead of a controversial device that others can verify or debunk, Grebennikov is locked as a fringe legend in the scientific underground, and his platform becomes a ghost machine, a craft that might have existed but now lives only in words, with the pages that mattered literally cut out. Chapter 3. The safer cigarette they chose to bury instead of admit they were killing you. Picture a lab where cigarettes aren't being engineered to hook you harder, but to stop giving you cancer. And the moment they get close, the real problem isn't chemistry anymore, it's lawyers. That's the story behind Project XA, a cancer-free cigarette that came frighteningly close to reality before the tobacco industry realized what it would legally mean to admit such a thing was possible. In 1955, scientist James D. Mould began working with tobacco company Liggett and Myers, tasked with identifying which components of cigarette smoke caused cancer in lab animals. Over roughly 25 years and around $10 million of investment, that research evolved into Project XA, an attempt to build a cigarette that used palladium and magnesium nitrate to neutralize cancer-causing compounds before they reach the smoker's lungs. In animal tests, these modified cigarettes showed a dramatic reduction in cancer incidence, suggesting that, at least under lab conditions, you could smoke and see far fewer, or even no, tumors. At first, Mould had backing, funding, time, external consultants, everything pointing toward a future where a safer cigarette could be both a scientific breakthrough and a marketing weapon. Then the legal department stepped in. If you release a cigarette that is measurably safer, you are effectively admitting that your old products were deadly and that you knew enough to change them. Lawyers warned that launching Project XA could trigger a tidal wave of lawsuits from sick and dying smokers who could now say, "You had a way to hurt us less, and you chose not to." The science didn't fail. It hit a wall called liability. Support for Project X. A evaporated, the project was shut down, and Mould was instructed not to publish his results, locking decades of work behind silence. Inside the industry, there was another motive. Liggett didn't want to break ranks with giants like Philip Morris by openly admitting cigarettes could be made significantly less lethal. Instead of becoming the company that changed smoking forever, they stayed in line, kept quiet, and carried on selling the same cancer-causing products. On paper, Project XA was a technical success and a massive commercial opportunity. In reality, it became something darker, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous invention isn't the one that kills people, but the one that proves they never had to die that way in the first place. Chapter 4. How to buy silence. When progress gets a price tag. When a discovery threatens an entire industry, you don't always need to discredit the inventor. You can just quietly put a price on his silence. No public scandal, no courtroom drama, just a private deal that makes walking away feel safer than pushing forward. In the case of free energy inventor Lester Hendershot, stories emerged of a major corporation approaching him with a simple offer: money now, no generator later. He was reportedly offered $25,000, a huge sum at the time, on the condition that he stop working on his device for 20 years. 20 years isn't a pause, it's a burial. By the time that kind of blackout ends, patents expire, markets shift, the inventor ages or dies, and what was revolutionary quietly turns into a historical curiosity. On the surface, it looks like a reward. The inventor gets paid, no one threatens him, there's no messy trial. Underneath, it works like a slow-motion erasure. The public never sees a finished product, rivals never build on it, and the disruptive potential dissolves into rumor. You don't have to destroy the genius. You only have to delay him until his idea no longer matters. Chapter 5. The fastest way to kill a new. Physics. Call it pseudoscience. Not every inconvenient technology needs a payoff or a raid. Sometimes all it takes is a single word: pseudoscience. Once that label sticks, funding dries up, journals look away, and anyone who shows interest risks being dragged down with it. That's what happened around a cluster of forbidden ideas: T. Henry Murray's radiant energy, Viktor Grebenikov's cavity structural effect, Victor Schauberger's vortex-driven implosion concepts, pulling energy from the environment, gravity-bending structures, power from spiraling water and air, didn't fit neatly inside the safe boundaries of mainstream physics. Instead of a large, systematic replication attempts, they mostly got skepticism, ridicule, and a demand to fully explain every theory up front before anyone would seriously test the hardware. Calling something pseudoscience is a shortcut that tells the world, you don't need to look. We've already decided for you. Many of these experiments sat in a messy gray zone, badly documented in places, sometimes exaggerated, but based on real devices, physical observations, and repeated claims. By wiping the whole field off the map with one word, institutions avoided the cost and risk of investigating technologies that, if even partly real, would crash straight into existing economic and scientific structures. Chapter 6. When the state steps. In some stories don't end with mockery or secret buyouts. They end with raids, seized equipment, and prison terms. At that level, the conflict isn't just inventor versus industry anymore. It's inventor versus the state. Wilhelm Reich is one of the starkest examples. After developing organ accumulators and later cloudbuster devices he said could influence weather and break droughts, he drew the full attention of U.S. regulators. The Food and Drug Administration didn't just question his ideas. It secured court orders that led to his orgone devices and publications being confiscated and destroyed. Reich refused to back down, violated an injunction against distributing organy-related materials, and was sentenced to prison for contempt of court, where he died. Victor Schauberger's post-war experience adds another layer. After World War II, U.S. intelligence reportedly detained him for around 9 months, taking his documents and prototypes for examination. For a man who had devoted his life to unconventional energy and propulsion concepts based on vortices and implosion, it looked less like a scientific debate and more like a quiet extraction. When he emerged, his health and spirit were reportedly broken, and much of his work had disappeared into locked archives. Together, these cases show the final stage of suppression. First, a dangerous idea might be mocked. If that fails, it might be bought. And if it still won't die, it can be treated as a legal or national security threat. At that point, the question is no longer whether the science is right or wrong. It's who has the power to decide whether anyone else will ever see the experiments again.